The gunshot echoed across the Montana prairie, silencing the evening birds and making Olivia Fairchild's heart stutter in her chest as she realized her father had just sold her to the highest bidder. It was 1875, and while the West was supposedly growing civilized, there were still dark corners where men like her father ruled their families with iron fists and liquor-soaked souls. $300, announced Bartholomew Fairchild, pocketing the money with a crooked grin that showed his tobacco-stained teeth. "She's yours now, Abernathy. Good riddance to the ungrateful wench." Samuel Abernathy's face remained impassive as he stood tall in his worn leather boots, his broad shoulders squared beneath a dust-covered denim jacket. His hat tipped low over eyes that had seen too much of the frontier's cruelty, but nothing quite like this a father willing to sell his own flesh and blood to settle a gambling debt. "Miss Fairchild," he said quietly, ignoring her father completely now that the transaction was complete, "gather what belongings you wish to take. We ride within the hour." Olivia, 22 years old and trembling with a mixture of terror and relief, nodded silently. She'd known this day might come. Her father's debts had been mounting, and his threats growing more specific. At least the buyer wasn't old Jeremiah Wallace with his wandering hands and 5 deceased wives. This stranger, this Samuel Abernathy, had eyes that held something other than lust or cruelty. What it was, she couldn't yet name. "You can't even wait until morning?" her father slurred, already uncorking another bottle of whiskey. "No," Samuel replied flatly. "I don't believe I can stand your company that long, Fairchild." As Olivia hurried to gather her meager possessions, she felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. What would become of her now? Was this tall, quiet cowboy saving her or simply claiming her for himself? She would soon discover the answer was neither. Chapter 1. The purchase. The Montana Territory stretched endlessly under the vast canvas of stars as Olivia followed Samuel Abernathy away from the only home she'd known for the past 5 years. It wasn't much of a home, a dilapidated cabin where she'd lived in fear of her father's unpredictable rages, but the unknown that lay ahead terrified her even more. "We'll make camp by that copse of trees," Samuel said, pointing toward a small cluster of cottonwoods in the distance. His deep voice was steady, betraying no emotion. They had ridden for 2 hours, Olivia perched uncomfortably on her father's old mare, clutching a sack containing everything she owned in the world. 2 dresses, a worn Bible that had belonged to her mother, a hairbrush, and a small silver locket containing a lock of her mother's hair. When they reached the trees, Samuel dismounted in one fluid motion, then turned to help her down. Olivia flinched when his hands encircled her waist, and she saw something flicker in his eyes, not anger at her reaction, but something that looked remarkably like understanding. "Miss Fairchild," he said, stepping back quickly once her feet touched the ground. "I believe we need to discuss your situation." "My situation?" Her voice sounded small even to her own ears. "I believe my situation is quite clear, Mr. Abernathy. You purchased me from my father." Samuel removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair with strands of silver at the temples despite his appearing to be no more than 30 years old. His face, weathered by sun and wind, bore a scar that ran from his right temple to his jawline. "I purchased your freedom, Miss Fairchild, not you." Olivia blinked, certain she had misheard him. "I don't understand." Samuel sighed and began unsaddling his horse. "Your father owes money to men far worse than me. When I heard he was offering you as payment, I knew I had to intervene. The men he's indebted to aren't the kind who would give you a choice in anything." "And you are?" she asked cautiously. "Yes," he said simply, setting his saddle on the ground. "I am giving you a choice." He busied himself gathering wood for a small fire while Olivia stood frozen, trying to process his words. After he had a modest flame going, he sat on a fallen log and gestured for her to join him. She remained standing, What sort of choice? I can take you to the nearest town. Helena's about 3 days' ride from here. You could find work there, perhaps as a seamstress or in one of the hotels. Or, he continued, I can escort you to my ranch near Virginia City. I need someone to help with cooking and housekeeping. It would be honest work with fair pay. And what would you expect in return? Olivia asked bluntly, years of hard experience having taught her that men rarely offered something for nothing. Samuel's jaw tightened. Only the work I described. You would have your own quarters. You would be an employee, Miss Fairchild, nothing more. And if I choose neither option? A hint of a smile touched his lips. Then I'd give you $20 from the money I paid your father and point you in whatever direction you wish to travel. Though I wouldn't recommend that course. The Montana Territory is no place for a woman alone. Olivia slowly sank onto the log, keeping several feet between them. Why would you do this? Why would you pay $300 just to set me free? Samuel poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks floating upward toward the star-filled sky. For a long moment he didn't answer. I had a sister, he finally said, his voice low. Her name was Sarah. Our parents died when we were young, and a man offered to take her in. Said he'd treat her like his own daughter. His knuckles whitened around the stick. He didn't. By the time I found her again, she was broken. She took her own life a month later. Olivia's breath caught. I'm sorry. It was 15 years ago. I was 16, she was 14. He tossed the stick into the flames. I made a promise at her grave that I would never stand by when I saw someone in a similar situation. The crackling of the fire filled the silence between them as Olivia studied this man who had appeared like some avenging angel in the midst of her despair. He didn't look like a hero from one of the dime novels that occasionally made their way to her father's cabin. He looked like what he was, a hard-working rancher with calloused hands and eyes that had seen too much sadness. What happens if my father comes looking for me? Or the men he owes money to? Samuel's expression hardened. Your father won't. He was halfway through that bottle when we left, and he has the money now to pay his debts. As for the others, they won't cross me. There was something in his tone that made Olivia believe him, though she couldn't imagine what kind of man would inspire such confidence against the cutthroats her father associated with. You don't have to decide tonight, he added more gently. Get some rest. We can talk more in the morning. He handed her a blanket from his saddlebag and pointed to a flat spot beneath one of the larger cottonwoods. I'll sleep on the other side of the fire. As Olivia wrapped herself in the rough wool blanket, she watched Samuel through the dancing flames. He moved with the quiet efficiency of a man accustomed to surviving in harsh conditions, checking the horses one last time before settling down with his back against his saddle, his rifle within easy reach. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without fear of what the night might bring. The morning brought clarity with its pale golden light. Olivia woke to the smell of coffee brewing over a rekindled fire. Samuel was already up, frying bacon in a small cast-iron pan. Morning, he said without looking up. Hope you're hungry. Olivia sat up, smoothing her tangled hair with her fingers. I am, thank you. He handed her a tin cup of coffee, strong and black. She sipped it cautiously, the bitter warmth spreading through her chest. Have you thought about what you want to do? He asked after they had eaten in companionable silence. Olivia had indeed thought about it, waking several times during the night to consider her options. I would like to see this ranch of yours, Mr. Abernathy, but I want to be clear about the terms of my employment. A hint of approval flickered in his eyes. Of course, you'll receive $10 a month, plus room and board. Sundays will be yours to do as you please. If at any time you wish to leave, you'll be paid what you're owed and can go on your way. That seems fair, she agreed, surprised by his generosity. $10 a month was more than many ranch hands made. And my duties would include cooking and cleaning? Yes, just for the main house. I have 3 men who work the ranch with me. They've been taking turns with the cooking, and I think they'd be mighty grateful for someone who knows their way around a kitchen. I'm a fair cook, she said. It was an understatement. Cooking had been one of her few pleasures in her father's house. A skill passed down from her mother before consumption had claimed her 5 years earlier. Good. We can head out after breakfast if that suits you. As they rode that day, the silence between them became more comfortable. Samuel pointed out landmarks and told her about the ranch he had built from nothing over the past 10 years. He had started with just 20 acres and a handful of cattle, building it into one of the more successful operations in the territory with over 2,000 acres and several hundred head of cattle. It's not fancy, he warned as they crested a hill on the second day, but it's solid. By late afternoon of the third day, Olivia caught her first glimpse of what would become her new home. The main house was indeed solid, a 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch stretching across the front. A large barn stood nearby, along with several smaller outbuildings. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing on rolling grasslands that stretched toward mountains silhouetted against the western sky. "This is Silvergrass Ranch," Samuel said, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached, 3 men emerged from the barn. The oldest, a weathered cowhand with a white mustache, lifted his hand in greeting. "Boss, didn't expect you back so soon." "Had a change of plans, Frank," Samuel replied, dismounting and helping Olivia down from her horse. "This is Miss Olivia Fairchild. She'll be taking over the cooking and housekeeping." Frank removed his hat, revealing a balding head. "Madam, it's a pleasure. These 2 are Jeremiah Taylor and Hank Wilson." The younger men nodded respectfully. Jeremiah looked to be in his mid-20s with sandy hair and a friendly smile. Hank was older, perhaps 40, with a perpetual squint and a missing front tooth. "Miss Fairchild will need to be shown to the room off the kitchen," Samuel instructed. "And I expect you all to treat her with the utmost respect." "Yes, sir," they answered in unison, with an earnestness that told Olivia they both respected and perhaps feared their employer. Samuel led her to the house, carrying her small bag as if it contained precious treasures instead of her meager possessions. The interior was simple but clean, with a large main room containing a stone fireplace, a solid oak table with 6 chairs, and several comfortable-looking armchairs. A staircase led to the second floor, and doorways opened to what she presumed were the kitchen and other rooms. "The kitchen's through here," Samuel confirmed, leading her through a doorway. It was a good-sized room with a large cast-iron stove, a pump sink, and ample counter space. A small room adjoined it her quarters, she realized. "It's not much," he said, setting her bag on the narrow bed that took up most of the space. A small dresser and a washstand completed the furnishings. A tiny window let in the late afternoon light. "It's perfect," Olivia said truthfully. After sharing a 1-room cabin with her father for years, this private space felt like a palace. "I'll let you get settled. Supper's usually at 6, but don't worry about cooking tonight. The men will manage." After he left, Olivia sat on the bed, running her hand over the clean quilt. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something dangerous hope. Chapter 2. New beginnings. The morning routine at Silvergrass Ranch began well before dawn. Olivia woke to the sound of movement in the kitchen, Samuel starting the coffee before heading out to the barn. She dressed quickly in one of her 2 dresses, the blue calico that was less worn than the brown, and hurried to take over the kitchen duties. "Good morning," Samuel said, looking up from where he was stoking the stove. "Didn't mean to wake you so early your first day." "I'm used to early mornings," she assured him, taking the coffee pot from his hands. "This is my job now." He relinquished it with a nod. The men will be in shortly. They like eggs and bacon, biscuits if you're up to it. There's flour in the bin there, eggs in the basket. Smokehouse is out back for bacon and ham. I'll manage, she said, already rolling up her sleeves. By the time the ranch hands tramped in, stomping mud from their boots on the porch, Olivia had a hearty breakfast waiting. The men's appreciative comments as they wolfed down the food gave her a sense of satisfaction she hadn't felt in a long time. "Miss Fairchild," Frank said, wiping his mustache, "if you cook like this every day, we might never leave." "You'll leave when there's work to be done," Samuel said dryly, but there was no real rebuke in his tone. He turned to Olivia. "This is excellent. Thank you." His simple gratitude warmed her more than the men's effusive praise. The days fell into a comfortable pattern. Olivia rose early to prepare breakfast, spent the morning cleaning and doing laundry, then prepared a midday meal that the men sometimes came in for if they were working nearby. Dinner was the main meal, served when everyone returned at dusk. After the men retired to the bunkhouse, she would often sit on the porch, watching the stars emerge while Samuel went over his ledgers or read one of the books from the small shelf in the main room. They rarely spoke during these evening hours, but the silence was companionable rather than awkward. Sometimes he would point out a constellation or mention something about the next day's work. Mostly, they just existed in the same space, each respecting the other's privacy. As the weeks passed, Olivia began to feel a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced since her mother died. The ranch hands treated her with respect, almost like a younger sister. Samuel remained polite but distant, though she occasionally caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. One evening, about a month after her arrival, he broke their usual silence. "How are you finding it here, Miss Fairchild?" Olivia looked up from the sock she was darning. "Very well, thank you. Everyone has been kind." "And the work isn't too much?" "Not at all. It's satisfying to care for a home that's appreciated." Samuel nodded, his gaze returning to his ledger. After a moment, he spoke again without looking up. "I noticed you're running low on supplies. I'm riding into Virginia City tomorrow for some business. Would you like to come along? You could select what you need yourself rather than just giving me a list." Olivia's heart quickened at the prospect of seeing the town. "I would like that very much, thank you. We'll leave after breakfast, then." The next morning, Olivia wore her best dress, the blue calico with only one small patch near the hem, and pinned her hair up neatly beneath a bonnet she had made from scraps of fabric found in a trunk in the attic. She had asked Samuel's permission before using the material, and he had waved off her concerns, saying anything in the house was at her disposal. The ride to Virginia City took most of the morning. As they approached the bustling mining town, Olivia tried to hide her excitement. It had been years since she'd been in a proper town, her father having moved them progressively farther from civilization as his debts and reputation worsened. Virginia City in 1875 was past its gold rush heyday but still thriving. The main street was lined with wooden buildings housing various businesses, a general store, a hotel, saloons, a bank, and even a small theater. People of all descriptions moved along the boardwalks or rode past on horses and wagons. Samuel helped her down from her horse in front of the general store. "I have business at the bank and then with the blacksmith. Will 2 hours give you enough time to select what you need?" "Yes, that should be plenty," she assured him, accepting the small purse of money he handed her. "I'll meet you back here. If you finish early, wait inside the store. Don't wander the streets alone." His protective tone might have offended her if she hadn't been aware of the dangers a woman alone could face, especially in a town where men outnumbered women significantly. The general store was a treasure trove of goods. Olivia moved through the aisles with deliberate care, selecting necessities like flour, sugar, coffee, and spices, but also allowing herself the small luxury of a length of pretty blue gingham fabric that caught her eye. The shopkeeper, a friendly older woman named Mrs. Henderson, chatted as she tallied Olivia's purchases. "You must be the young woman Samuel hired to keep house," she said, measuring out coffee beans. "He mentioned he'd found someone when he was in last month." "Yes. I've been at Silvergrass Ranch for about 4 weeks now," Olivia confirmed. Mrs. Henderson nodded approvingly. "It's high time that man had someone looking after that house. Been a widower too long, if you ask me." Olivia nearly dropped the spool of thread she was examining. "Mr. Abernathy was married?" "Oh my, yes. His Catherine died 7 years ago. Childbirth fever. The baby too. He doesn't speak of it, of course." Mrs. Henderson lowered her voice. "Nearly destroyed him. He was a different man before, smiled more, was more involved in town affairs. Afterward, he just withdrew to that ranch. Focused on building it up like a man possessed." This new information cast Samuel in a different light. His reserved demeanor, his solitary evenings, they suddenly made more sense. And his kindness toward her took on new meaning. He knew what it was to lose someone, to be alone. When Samuel met her at the appointed time, Olivia found herself studying his face, searching for signs of the grief Mrs. Henderson had described. There was a sadness in his eyes that she had noticed before but hadn't fully understood until now. "Did you find everything you needed?" he asked, helping load her purchases into saddlebags. "Yes, thank you." Mrs. Henderson was very helpful. They ate lunch at the hotel dining room, a treat that Olivia savored. Samuel was more talkative than usual, pointing out various landmarks and telling her about the town's history during the gold rush days. As they rode back to the ranch in the afternoon light, Olivia gathered her courage to ask the question that had been on her mind since her conversation with Mrs. Henderson. "Mr. Abernathy, may I ask you something personal?" He glanced at her, surprise evident on his face. "You may ask. I might not answer. I heard in town that you were married once." His posture stiffened slightly, but his voice remained even. "Yes, her name was Catherine." "I'm sorry for your loss," Olivia said softly. Samuel was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't respond further. Then he sighed, a sound so full of lingering grief that it made her heart ache. "Catherine was a schoolteacher. Came out west from Boston with dreams of educating frontier children. We were married for 3 years. His voice grew rougher. "She would have liked you, I think. She was also practical but kind." The simple comparison touched Olivia deeply. "Thank you for telling me about her." He nodded once, and they rode the rest of the way in silence. But something had shifted between them. A small wall had come down, allowing a glimpse of the man behind the reserved employer. That evening, after dinner, Samuel brought a small package into the kitchen where Olivia was finishing the dishes. "I got something for you in town," he said, looking almost embarrassed as he placed it on the table. Surprised, Olivia wiped her hands on her apron and untied the string around the brown paper package. Inside was a book, a collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. "I noticed you reading that old Bible in the evenings sometimes," he explained. "Thought you might enjoy something else to read." "It's beautiful," she said, running her fingers over the embossed cover. "Thank you." "It's nothing," he said gruffly, but she could tell he was pleased by her reaction. That night, as she read the poems by lamplight in her small room, Olivia realized that her feelings for Samuel Abernathy were becoming dangerously complicated. He was her employer, her rescuer, but increasingly, he was becoming something more, someone she looked forward to seeing each day, someone whose rare smile could brighten her mood, someone she was beginning to care for deeply. It was a realization that both thrilled and terrified her. Chapter 3. Summer days. As spring yielded to summer, life at Silvergrass Ranch took on a rhythm dictated by the seasons and the needs of the cattle. The days grew longer and warmer, filled with the constant work that ranch life demanded. For Olivia, these months brought a growing sense of belonging and purpose. She had expanded her duties beyond cooking and cleaning, taking on the care of a small vegetable garden behind the house and even learning to milk the 2 cows that provided fresh dairy for the ranch. Each new skill mastered gave her a sense of accomplishment and independence she had never known under her father's roof. Samuel noticed her industry and frequently commented on the improvements she had made to the ranch house. The curtains she had sewn from the blue gingham, the wildflowers she arranged on the dining table, the increased variety in their meals all received his quiet appreciation. One hot July afternoon, Olivia was kneading bread dough when Samuel entered the kitchen, removing his hat as he always did indoors. "Miss Fairchild, I wondered if you might be willing to help me with something." She wiped flour from her hands. "Of course. I received a letter today from my mother's cousin in Denver. She's sending her daughter, Charlotte, to stay with us for a few weeks. The girl is 15 and apparently needs some country air after a bout of illness. When will she arrive?" "Next Tuesday on the stage to Virginia City. I'll go fetch her, but I wanted to make sure you wouldn't mind having another female in the house. She'll need some looking after, I expect." Olivia smiled at his obvious discomfort with the prospect of hosting a teenaged girl. "I would be happy for the company, Mr. Abernathy. We can prepare the guest room upstairs for her." Relief crossed his features. "Thank you. I'm afraid I know little about young ladies and their needs." "When was the last time you saw her?" "I've never met her," he admitted. "My mother's family mostly disowned her when she married my father and moved west. This cousin, Eleanor, is the only one who maintained correspondence. After my mother died, she occasionally wrote to check on Sarah and me." Olivia nodded, understanding the complicated nature of family relationships all too well. "Well, we'll make sure Charlotte feels welcome here." The following Tuesday, Samuel returned from town with their young guest. Charlotte Reed was a slender girl with golden brown hair and a complexion still pale from her recent illness. Despite her delicate appearance, her eyes were bright with curiosity as Samuel introduced her to Olivia. "It's so good to meet you, Miss Fairchild," she said, her voice carrying the refined accent of a girl raised in Denver society. "Cousin Samuel has told me how wonderfully you've been managing things here." "Welcome to Silvergrass Ranch," Olivia replied warmly. "I've prepared a room for you upstairs. You must be tired after your journey." "A little," Charlotte admitted. "But mostly I'm excited to be somewhere new. Mother hardly lets me out of her sight at home, especially since I was ill this spring." Over the next few days, Charlotte's presence brought a new energy to the ranch house. Despite her recent illness, she was full of enthusiasm for ranch life, asking endless questions about everything from how butter was churned to why cattle needed branding. Samuel, initially awkward around his young cousin, gradually warmed to her presence. Olivia often caught him patiently explaining various aspects of ranching or listening to Charlotte's stories about life in Denver. One evening, as Charlotte had gone to bed early, exhausted from a day spent helping Olivia with preserving vegetables from the garden, Samuel lingered at the kitchen table. "She seems to be regaining her strength," he observed, watching as Olivia wiped down the counters. "Yes, fresh air and good food work wonders. And she's very helpful. She has a quick mind." "She likes you," Samuel said. "Talks about you constantly when we're riding. Miss Fairchild this, Miss Fairchild that." Olivia smiled. "I've grown fond of her too. It's nice having another woman to talk to." "You must get lonely out here," he said suddenly, "with just us men for company." The statement surprised her. "Not really. I've always been somewhat solitary by nature, and this is much better than." She trailed off, not wanting to mention her previous life. "Then living with your father," he finished for her. "Yes. Samuel's expression darkened. Has he tried to contact you? No, she assured him. I doubt he even knows where I am. Or cares. Good. His voice held a protective edge that sent a small thrill through her. Olivia, it was the first time he had used her given name, and they both seemed startled by it. Miss Fairchild, he corrected himself. I want you to know that you always have a place here, even after your agreed term of employment. If you wish to stay on, that is. The sincerity in his eyes made her heart beat faster. Thank you. I'd like that. Their gazes held for a long moment before Samuel cleared his throat and stood. Well, good night then. Good night, Mr. Abernathy. After he left, Olivia pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks. The simple exchange had felt more intimate than any conversation they'd had before. Charlotte's presence continued to catalyze changes in the household dynamic. She insisted that they all eat dinner together every evening, drawing Samuel out with questions and observations that required more than his usual brief responses. She convinced him to play the old piano in the main room that had sat silent since Catherine's death, revealing that he had a pleasant baritone voice when she coaxed him into singing along with her. One Sunday afternoon in late July, Charlotte suggested a picnic by the creek that ran through the eastern edge of the ranch property. It's such a beautiful day, and Sundays are for relaxation, Cousin Samuel. Even God rested on the seventh day. Unable to argue with such logic, Samuel agreed. Olivia packed a basket with cold chicken, biscuits, apple tarts, and a jug of lemonade. The three of them rode to a shady spot by the creek where cottonwoods provided relief from the summer sun. As they ate, Charlotte regaled them with stories of her school friends and the latest Denver fashions. After they had finished eating, she announced her intention to look for wildflowers further downstream. Don't go too far, Samuel cautioned. I won't, she promised with a mischievous smile that made Olivia suspect the girl was deliberately giving them time alone. Once Charlotte was out of earshot, a comfortable silence fell between them. Samuel lay back on the blanket, his hat over his face to block the dappled sunlight coming through the leaves. Olivia sat with her back against a tree trunk, watching the water flow over smooth stones in the creek bed. This was Catherine's favorite spot on the ranch, Samuel said suddenly, his voice muffled by his hat. She used to come here to read or just sit and think. Olivia wasn't sure how to respond. It was the first time he had voluntarily mentioned his late wife since their conversation after the trip to Virginia City. He pushed his hat back to look at her. I haven't been here in years. Couldn't bring myself to, but it's good to come back. To remember the happy times. She must have been very special. She was. He sat up, plucking a blade of grass and twirling it between his fingers. But grief is a strange thing. It changes over time. At first, it's like drowning, you can't breathe, can't think of anything else. Then, gradually, you learn to live with it. It becomes a part of you, but not all of you. Olivia thought of her own mother, gone these 5 years. Yes, that's exactly it. I think I've been stuck, he continued, looking out over the creek. Not moving forward. Having you and Charlotte here. It's reminded me that life goes on. That maybe it's time to start living again instead of just existing. The honesty in his voice touched her deeply. It's never too late to start again. His eyes met hers, and the intensity in them made her breath catch. No, he agreed softly. It's not. The moment was broken by Charlotte's return, her arms full of wildflowers. Look at all these. Aren't they beautiful? We should put them in vases all over the house. As they packed up to return to the ranch, Olivia caught Samuel watching her with an expression that held something new possibility. The week following the picnic brought subtle changes in Samuel's behavior toward Olivia. He sought out her company more frequently, often finding reasons to be in the kitchen while she worked or joining her on the porch in the evenings even when he had no ranch business to discuss. One evening, as they sat watching a spectacular sunset paint the western sky in shades of orange and pink, he asked her about her life before coming to Silvergrass. "You rarely speak of your past," he observed. Olivia folded her hands in her lap. "There's little worth telling. My mother was the light in my life. After she died, my father." She hesitated. "He was always difficult, but grief and whiskey made him cruel. The last 5 years were just about survival." "And before that? Where did you grow up?" "In Missouri initially. My father owned a small farm there. We came west when I was 16 because he heard there was money to be made in Montana Territory. There wasn't, at least not for him." "You never married?" The question was casual, but his eyes were intent on her face. "No. There were few opportunities to meet suitable men. And my father." She stopped, unwilling to detail how he had driven away any man who showed interest in her, unwilling to lose his housekeeper and cook. "I understand," Samuel said, and she believed he did. "What about you?" she asked. "You never remarried after Catherine." He shook his head. "Never met anyone who made me want to." His gaze lingered on her face in a way that made her wonder if that might be changing. Charlotte's presence continued to bring a lightness to the ranch house that had been missing before. She attached herself to Olivia like a younger sister, helping with chores and confiding her dreams of becoming a teacher like Samuel's late wife. "Do you think I could do it?" she asked one afternoon as they hung laundry on the line behind the house. "Become a teacher, I mean? I think you could do anything you set your mind to," Olivia answered truthfully. "You're intelligent and good with explanations." Charlotte beamed at the praise. "Mother wants me to focus on finding a suitable husband, but I'd like to do something meaningful first, like Catherine did." "Your cousin speaks of her?" "A little, mostly when we're riding alone. He told me how they met. She came to teach at the school in Virginia City, and he was on the committee that hired her. Said he knew the moment he saw her that she was special." Olivia felt a pang of something like jealousy, followed immediately by guilt. Catherine had been his great love. It was natural that he still cherished her memory. "He admires you too, you know," Charlotte added casually, pinning a sheet to the line. Olivia nearly dropped the wet shirt she was holding. "I'm sure he values my work here." Charlotte gave her a knowing look that seemed beyond her 15 years. "It's more than that. He watches you when you're not looking, and he smiles more when you're in the room." "Charlotte, that's not appropriate. It's true," the girl insisted. "And I think it's wonderful. Catherine has been gone for 7 years. Cousin Samuel deserves happiness again." Olivia changed the subject, unwilling to encourage Charlotte's matchmaking fantasies. But the girl's words stayed with her, making her more aware of the moments when Samuel's gaze lingered on her, or when their hands accidentally touched as they passed dishes at dinner. As July gave way to August, the ranch became busier with preparations for the fall cattle drive. Samuel and the men worked longer hours, often returning after dark covered in dust and exhaustion. Olivia made sure hot meals were waiting regardless of the hour, earning grateful thanks from all of them. One evening, as she was preparing to take a bath in the small room off the kitchen that served as her private bathing area, a knock came at her bedroom door. She opened it to find Samuel holding a package. "This came for you in town today," he said, handing it to her. "From Denver." Puzzled, Olivia accepted the package. "I don't know anyone in Denver." "Open it," he suggested, an unusual hint of eagerness in his voice. Inside the brown paper wrapping was a beautiful dress of deep blue cotton, far finer than anything Olivia had owned in years. A note tucked inside read, "Every woman needs something pretty to wear. With affection, Eleanor Reed." Charlotte's mother sent this? But why? Samuel shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I might have mentioned in my last letter that you could use some new things. She offered to select something suitable. Olivia was touched by his thoughtfulness. It's beautiful, but you shouldn't have gone to the trouble. It was no trouble. His eyes were warm as they took in her surprised expression. Charlotte mentioned there's to be a harvest dance in Virginia City next month. I thought perhaps you might want to attend. With me. The invitation took her completely by surprise. You want me to go to the dance with you? Yes. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of nervousness. Unless you'd rather not. I'd be honored, she said softly. Thank you. A smile spread across his face, transforming his usually serious features. Good. That's good. After he left, Olivia held the dress against herself, looking at her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. The woman who looked back at her seemed different from the fearful creature who had ridden away from her father's cabin 4 months earlier. This woman had color in her cheeks and hope in her eyes, and perhaps, just perhaps, the beginnings of love in her heart. Chapter 4. Revelations. The day of Charlotte's departure arrived with the first hints of autumn in the air. The girl had flourished during her stay at Silvergrass Ranch, her cheeks now rosy with health and her spirit buoyed by the freedom she had experienced away from her mother's watchful eyes. I don't want to go, she confessed to Olivia as they packed her trunk. Everything is so alive here. Denver will seem stifling after this. You'll be back, Olivia assured her, folding a shawl and placing it carefully among Charlotte's belongings. Your cousin has already invited you for Christmas. Charlotte brightened at this reminder. Yes, and I'll be counting the days. Perhaps by then, things will have progressed between you and Cousin Samuel. Charlotte, Olivia chided, though without real rebuke. The girls' romantic notions had become a running theme in their conversations. You can't deny there's something between you, Charlotte persisted. Everyone can see it. Even Frank mentioned it to me. This was news to Olivia. Frank discussed me with you? Only in the nicest way, Charlotte hurried to explain. He said the boss hasn't looked this alive in years, and it's a mighty fine thing to see. Olivia felt her cheeks grow warm. The ranch hands shouldn't be gossiping about their employer. It wasn't gossip. It was. Charlotte searched for the right word. Approval. Samuel drove Charlotte to Virginia City to catch the eastbound stage, leaving Olivia with a day to herself. She used the time to prepare a special farewell dinner and to try on the blue dress that had arrived from Denver. It fit as if it had been made for her, the color bringing out the blue in her gray-blue eyes. When they returned that evening, Charlotte hugged Olivia tightly. I'm going to miss you so much. You must write to me and tell me everything that happens. I will, Olivia promised, returning the embrace. And you must tell me all about your school term. Dinner was a bittersweet affair, with Charlotte chattering excitedly about her plans for the fall while clearly reluctant to leave the ranch. After the meal, Samuel presented her with a gift, a small leather-bound journal. For your thoughts and observations, he told her. You have a keen eye. You should record what you see. Charlotte's eyes welled with tears as she hugged her cousin. Thank you for everything. These weeks have been the best of my life. The next morning's departure was emotional. Charlotte clung to both Samuel and Olivia, extracting promises of letters and future visits. As the stage pulled away, she waved until it disappeared around a bend in the road. The ranch seemed quieter in her absence. Olivia felt the loss keenly as she went about her chores, missing the girls' cheerful presence and constant questions. Samuel, too, appeared subdued as he returned to the demands of preparing for the upcoming cattle drive. The harvest dance in Virginia City was scheduled for the weekend before the drive was to begin. As the day approached, Olivia found herself both excited and nervous. It would be her first social event in years, and her first time appearing publicly at Samuel's side. The evening of the dance, she took extra care with her appearance, arranging her dark hair in a style Charlotte had taught her and donning the blue dress. When she emerged from her room, Samuel was waiting in the kitchen, dressed in his best clothes, clean black trousers, a white shirt, and a dark vest. His hair was neatly combed, and he had trimmed his beard. He looked handsome in a way that made her heart skip. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice low and appreciative. "Thank you." She smoothed the skirt of her dress self-consciously. "You look very nice as well." The drive to town was filled with anticipation. Virginia City was transformed for the harvest celebration, with lanterns strung along the main street and the town hall decorated with autumn leaves and bundles of wheat. Music spilled from the open doors as they approached, the sounds of fiddles and laughter mingling in the cool evening air. Inside, the hall was crowded with ranchers, townspeople, and miners from the surrounding area. Tables laden with food lined one wall, while a small band played on a raised platform at the far end. People nodded greetings to Samuel as they entered, curious glances directed at Olivia on his arm. "Samuel Abernathy. And this must be Miss Fairchild." Mrs. Henderson from the general store approached them, beaming. "How lovely to see you both. And don't you look a picture, my dear." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson," Olivia replied, grateful for the friendly face. "You must introduce your young lady around, Samuel," the shopkeeper continued. "Though I expect half the men here will be trying to steal her away for a dance." Samuel's hand tightened slightly on Olivia's arm. "They're welcome to try," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. As Mrs. Henderson predicted, Olivia found herself in demand as a dance partner. She accepted a few offers, not wanting to appear rude, but always returned to Samuel's side afterward. He danced with her twice, moving with a grace that surprised her given his usual practical demeanor. During a break in the music, they stepped outside for some air. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the black sky above the town. "Are you enjoying yourself?" Samuel asked as they stood on the porch of the town hall. "Very much," she assured him. "It's been a long time since I attended anything like this." "You dance well. So do you." "I wouldn't have expected it." A half-smile curved his lips. "Catherine insisted I learn. Said she wouldn't marry a man who couldn't dance at his own wedding." The mention of his wife didn't sting as it might have once. Instead, Olivia felt a connection to the woman who had loved him first. She was wise. Yes, she was. He turned to face her fully. "Olivia, there's something I've been meaning to. Well, look what we have here," a slurred voice interrupted. "If it ain't the high and mighty Samuel Abernathy and his pretty little housekeeper." Olivia froze at the familiar voice, her blood turning to ice. Standing at the bottom of the steps, swaying slightly with intoxication, was her father. Bartholomew Fairchild looked worse than when she had last seen him, thinner, with a wild look in his bloodshot eyes. His clothes were filthy, and his hands trembled with the palsy of the habitual drunk. "Father," she acknowledged, her voice barely audible. Samuel moved slightly in front of her, his posture tense. "Fairchild, you're a long way from your cabin." "Been working at the mines," her father replied, gesturing vaguely toward the hills. "Heard there was a dance. Then I saw my ungrateful daughter walking in on the arm of the man who stole her." "No one stole me," Olivia said, finding her voice. "You sold me. And I'm thinking I didn't charge enough," he sneered. "Looks like Abernathy got himself more than a housekeeper." Samuel's hands clenched into fists. "You need to leave. Now." "Or what?" Bartholomew challenged, taking a step closer. You gonna hit me for speaking the truth? Everyone knows what happens when a man brings a young woman into his house, especially one as pretty as my Olivia. Several people had come out onto the porch, drawn by the confrontation. Whispers rippled through the small crowd as they recognized the nature of the dispute. Nothing improper has occurred between Miss Fairchild and myself, Samuel stated clearly, his voice carrying to the onlookers. She is an employee who has my utmost respect. That ain't what I heard, Bartholomew insisted. I heard you two been playing house out at that ranch of yours. Living in sin, I call it. Olivia felt her face burn with humiliation. The proud confidence she had felt earlier in the evening crumbled under her father's crude accusations and the speculative gazes of the townspeople. That's enough. Samuel's voice was dangerously quiet. Miss Fairchild has her own quarters. She is a lady deserving of respect, something you clearly know nothing about. She's my daughter, and I'm taking her back, Bartholomew declared, lurching forward to grab Olivia's arm. Samuel moved swiftly, intercepting him with a hand to the chest that stopped him in his tracks. You gave up any right to her when you sold her to me. She stays where she chooses. Then I want more money, her father demanded. Another 300, or I'll tell everyone in the territory that Samuel Abernathy keeps a whore on his ranch. The crude word, applied to his daughter, snapped the last thread of Olivia's fear. Anger surged through her, hot and clarifying. She stepped around Samuel to face her father directly. You will never speak of me that way again, she said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. You are no father to me. You lost that right long ago. I am where I choose to be, with people who treat me with dignity. You ungrateful little... Step back, Fairchild, Samuel warned, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. You heard the lady. She's made her choice. The sheriff of Virginia City, attracted by the disturbance, pushed through the gathering crowd. Everything all right here? Just fine, Sheriff, Samuel answered, his eyes not leaving Bartholomew. Mr. Fairchild was just leaving town. Like hell I was. Bartholomew started, but the sheriff cut him off. You've been causing trouble since you arrived last week, Fairchild. I think it's time you moved on. His hand rested meaningfully on his own weapon. Bartholomew looked from the sheriff to Samuel to Olivia, his face contorted with thwarted rage. This ain't over. He spat before turning and staggering away into the darkness. The confrontation left a pall over the evening. Though Samuel tried to assure her they could stay and continue enjoying the dance, Olivia could feel the curious stares and hear the whispered comments. Her father's crude accusations had planted seeds of doubt about her relationship with Samuel. I'd like to go home, please, she said quietly. On the drive back to the ranch, Samuel's anger was palpable in the tense set of his shoulders and the tight grip he maintained on the reins. I'm sorry, Olivia finally said, breaking the silence. I had no idea he was in the area. You have nothing to apologize for, Samuel replied firmly. Your father is the one who should be sorry. But now people will talk. They'll think. They'll believe what he implied. Samuel pulled the wagon to a stop, turning to face her in the moonlight. Let them talk. We know the truth. The truth is that I live in your house, unchaperoned. By the standards of proper society, that alone is enough to damage my reputation. And yours. Damn proper society, he said with unexpected vehemence. This is the frontier. People live by different rules here. Not that different, she countered softly. You saw their faces. They believe I'm your... That we're... Would that be so terrible? The question hung in the night air between them. Olivia's breath caught. What do you mean? Instead of answering, Samuel reached out to touch her cheek, his fingers gentle against her skin. I was trying to tell you something before we were interrupted. Something I've been wanting to say for a while now. Her heart hammered in her chest. Yes. I care for you, Olivia. Not as an employee. Not as someone I rescued. As a woman. His voice was low and intense. I've tried to keep my distance, to be proper. But seeing your father tonight, hearing him threaten to take you away, it made me realize I can't pretend anymore. Samuel, she whispered, using his given name for the first time. I care for you too. The confession felt both terrifying and liberating. For months, she had guarded her growing feelings, convinced they could never be returned, or if they were, that his guilt over Catherine would prevent him from acting on them. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, she moved toward him, closing the distance until their lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepening with shared longing. When they finally broke apart, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. I want to court you properly, no matter what people say or think. I would like that, she said, her voice tremulous with emotion. He kissed her once more briefly, before taking up the reins again. The rest of the journey passed in a different kind of silence, one filled with unspoken promises and newfound hope. As they approached the ranch, however, they both noticed an unusual glow in the distance. It took a moment to register what they were seeing. Fire, leaping from the roof of the main house. No, Samuel breathed, urging the horses to a gallop. By the time they reached the ranch yard, the fire had engulfed the upper story of the house. Frank and the other hands were forming a bucket brigade from the well to the burning building, but their efforts seemed futile against the rapidly spreading flames. What happened? Samuel demanded, leaping from the wagon. Don't know, boss, Frank shouted over the roar of the fire. We were all in the bunkhouse when Hank spotted the flames. Started in your bedroom, looks like. Samuel turned to Olivia, his face grim in the firelight. Stay here. Where are you going? She cried as he strode toward the barn. To get more buckets. We need to try to save what we can. For hours they fought the fire, but it was a losing battle. By dawn, all that remained of the main house was a smoldering shell. Miraculously, the barn and outbuildings had been spared, along with the bunkhouse where the men slept. As they stood exhausted in the yard, surveying the destruction, Frank approached with something clutched in his hand. Found this by the back door, he said, holding out a half-empty whiskey bottle. And this was stuck under it. He handed Samuel a crudely written note. Samuel read it, his face hardening into a mask of fury. Without a word, he passed it to Olivia. Should have taken my offer, it read. This is just the beginning. BF, her father had made good on his threat, destroying Samuel's home in revenge. I'll kill him, Samuel said, his voice cold with rage. No, Olivia grasped his arm. He's not worth hanging for. This is my fault. If I hadn't been here... Don't, Samuel cut her off sharply. This is not your fault. It's his and his alone. Frank cleared his throat. Boss, I sent Jeremiah to town to fetch the sheriff. Should be back soon. Samuel nodded, his jaw tight. Good. We'll let the law handle this. The sheriff arrived mid-morning, examining the evidence and taking statements from everyone. He promised to form a posse to search for Bartholomew Fairchild, but his expression was not hopeful. Territory's big, he reminded them. And a man who knows the wilderness can disappear pretty easily, but we'll do our best to find him. After the sheriff departed, Samuel surveyed the blackened ruins of his home. We can rebuild, he said, more to himself than to Olivia. It'll take time, but we can make it better than before. Olivia stood beside him, her heart heavy with guilt despite his assurances. Where will you stay in the meantime? There's room in the bunkhouse. The men can squeeze together. And me? She asked quietly. Samuel turned to her, his expression softening. That's for you to decide, Olivia. You could stay in Virginia City. I'd pay for a room at the hotel until we rebuild. Or, he hesitated, you could go wherever you want. I'll give you money, help you get established somewhere new if that's what you prefer. The offer reminded her of their first meeting, when he had given her the freedom to choose her own path. Then she had been a stranger to him. Now they were so much more to each other. I want to stay, she said firmly. This is my home now. We'll rebuild it together. Relief washed over his features. Are you sure? After what happened last night in town and now this? It won't be easy. I'm sure, she answered, taking his hand in hers. My father tried to destroy what we have. I won't let him succeed. Samuel squeezed her hand. His eyes filled with admiration and something deeper. Nor will I. In that moment, standing amidst the ashes of what had been, they made a silent vow to build something new and stronger together, a future that no one, not even Bartholomew Fairchild, could tear down. Chapter 5. Rebuilding. The weeks following the fire were a time of adjustment and determination. Samuel and the ranch hands salvaged what they could from the ruins of the main house, a few kitchen implements, some books whose edges were singed but interiors intact, and miraculously, the small trunk containing Olivia's belongings, which had been protected by the stone exterior wall of her room. True to his word, Samuel arranged for Olivia to stay at the Virginia City Hotel, while he and the men began clearing away debris and planning for rebuilding. He rode into town every few days to check on her and to purchase supplies for the construction. During one such visit in late September, he found her sitting on the hotel porch, mending one of his shirts that had been torn during the work. You don't need to do that, he said, settling into the chair beside her. You're supposed to be resting. I'm tired of resting, she replied, not looking up from her neat stitches. I feel useless here while you're all working so hard. You could never be useless, Olivia. He watched her hands move deftly with the needle and thread. But if you're truly tired of town life, I have news that might interest you. She glanced up, noticing for the first time the excitement in his eyes. What is it? The frame for the new house is up. We should have the roof on by the end of next week if the weather holds. I've been thinking. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. There's a small cabin about a quarter-mile from the main house site. It was built years ago for the original ranch foreman, but it's been used for storage since I bought the place. We've cleaned it out and made it habitable. If you'd like to come back to the ranch, you could stay there while construction continues. Really? The prospect of returning to Silvergrass, even to a small cabin, filled her with joy. I would like that very much. It's not fancy, he warned. Just one room with a small stove for cooking and heat. It sounds perfect. 2 days later, Samuel brought her back to the ranch. As they approached, Olivia could see the wooden skeleton of the new house rising from the ashes of the old. It was larger than its predecessor, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. It's going to be beautiful, she said. Samuel nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. I've made some improvements to the design. The kitchen will be bigger with more windows, and there will be a proper parlor for entertaining. The foreman's cabin was indeed small, but clean and cozy. The men had furnished it with a narrow bed, a table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair placed near the small iron stove. Someone Frank, she suspected, had placed a bunch of late wildflowers in a jar on the table. It's lovely, she told Samuel, genuinely pleased with the simple accommodations. Thank you for bringing me back. The ranch hasn't been the same without you, he admitted, his eyes warm as they rested on her face. I've missed you. I've missed you too. She stepped closer to him, emboldened by the private setting. And I've been thinking about what you said about courting me properly. Samuel took her hands in his expression growing serious. I meant it, Olivia, but after what your father did. There's something you should know before we go any further. What is it? A thread of anxiety wound through her at his tone. The sheriff sent word yesterday. They found your father. Olivia's heart stuttered. Where? Dead. In an abandoned miner's shack about 15 miles from here. His grip on her hands tightened slightly. It appears he passed out drunk with a lit cigarette. The shack caught fire. A strange numbness spread through Olivia as she processed the news. The man who had been her father, who had caused so much pain and fear throughout her life, was gone. She searched her heart for grief but found only a hollow sense of closure. Are they certain it was him? Samuel nodded. They found his pocket watch with his initials, and the description matches. I see. She withdrew her hands from his and moved to sit in the rocking chair, suddenly needing the support. It's fitting, in a way. Fire was his last act against us, and fire took him in the end. Olivia. Samuel knelt before her, his face etched with concern. I'm sorry. Despite everything, he was still your father. Yes, he was. She looked into Samuel's eyes, finding strength in his steady gaze. But you were right when you said he gave up any right to me when he sold me. In truth, he gave up being a real father long before that. Samuel remained silent, allowing her the space to process her complicated emotions. I feel free, she finally said, as if a shadow that's been following me has finally lifted. Is that terrible? No, he assured her. It's honest. And you, Olivia Fairchild, are the most honest person I know. She smiled at that, a small smile but genuine. Tell me about the house. When do you think it will be finished? Understanding her need to move forward, Samuel described the construction timeline and details of the design. By the time he left to return to work, Olivia had regained her equilibrium. The news of her father's death settling into its proper place in her heart, a closed chapter rather than an open wound. Over the following weeks, Olivia integrated herself back into ranch life. Though she no longer lived in the main house, she cooked meals for Samuel and the men in the bunkhouse kitchen and helped with the countless tasks that kept the ranch running. She visited the construction site daily, offering suggestions about the kitchen layout or the placement of cupboards. Samuel courted her with a touching mix of old-fashioned formality and frontier practicality. He brought her small gifts when he returned from trips to town: ribbons for her hair, a new cookbook, once even a potted geranium to brighten her cabin. In the evenings, he often joined her for supper, and they would sit talking long into the night about books, their hopes for the ranch, and gradually, their deepening feelings for each other. Word of Bartholomew Fairchild's death spread through the territory, effectively silencing the gossip that had begun after the harvest dance confrontation. Mrs. Henderson and other respectable townswomen who had initially been cool toward Olivia now made efforts to include her, impressed by Samuel's obvious devotion and proper courtship. By mid-November, with winter approaching, the new house was nearly complete. The exterior was finished, the roof shingled, and the interior walls framed. Samuel and Olivia walked through the rooms one crisp afternoon, their breath forming clouds in the air. The stove for the kitchen should arrive next week, he told her, pointing to the space where it would stand. And the glass for the windows is coming from Helena on Monday. It's wonderful, Samuel, she said, turning in a slow circle to take in the spacious main room with its high ceiling. I can already imagine how it will look with furniture and curtains. And a Christmas tree right there, he added, indicating a corner near where the fireplace would be. Charlotte will be arriving in mid-December. I want the house to be ready for her visit. It will be, Olivia assured him. She had been helping with the interior work, staining wood for the floors and cabinets and sewing curtains for the windows. As they moved through the house, Samuel showed her each room, describing his vision for how it would be furnished. When they reached the master bedroom, he paused, a hint of nervousness in his demeanor. "I had them make this room larger than in the old house," he said, "and added a sitting area by the window." He glanced at her, then away. "I thought, that is, I hoped, it might one day be our room, not just mine." Olivia's heart swelled with emotion. It was the closest he had come to speaking of marriage, though she had seen the question growing in his eyes over the past weeks. "It's perfect," she said softly. He turned to her fully then, taking both her hands in his. "Olivia, I've been waiting for the right moment, but I'm beginning to think there is no perfect time. Only the time we make for ourselves." She felt a flutter of anticipation. "What are you saying, Samuel?" "I'm saying that I love you, that I want to build a life with you in this house, that I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I'm asking if you would do me the honor of becoming my wife." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. It caught the afternoon light streaming through the unglazed window, sending prisms dancing across the bare walls. "Oh, Samuel," Olivia breathed, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." His face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. In a way, she supposed it had a new ring for a new beginning, unburdened by the past. He drew her into his arms, his kiss tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, he rested his forehead against hers. "I was so afraid you might say no," he confessed. "Why would I ever refuse the man who gave me freedom, then gave me his heart?" They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony in the Virginia City Church. Frank stood as Samuel's best man, while Mrs. Henderson, who had become a friend and ally, attended Olivia. The small congregation included the other ranch hands and several townspeople who had come to respect the couple's devotion to each other. Charlotte arrived from Denver just in time for the wedding, bringing with her a beautiful white dress that her mother had sent for Olivia. "She feels terrible about missing the wedding," Charlotte explained, "but she said to tell you she'll visit in the spring when travel is easier." The new house was ready for habitation the day after the wedding. Samuel carried Olivia across the threshold in the traditional manner, both of them laughing as he nearly stumbled on the new carpet in the entryway. "Welcome home, Mrs. Abernathy," he said, setting her gently on her feet. "It sounds wonderful when you say it like that," she replied, looking around at the home they had rebuilt together larger and stronger than before. That night, as they lay together in the master bedroom that was now truly theirs, Samuel traced the contours of her face with gentle fingers. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Completely," she assured him, curling closer to his warmth. "Are you? More than I ever thought possible." He kissed her softly. "When I rode to your father's cabin that day, I only intended to save you from a bad situation. I never imagined I would find my own salvation in the process." "We saved each other," Olivia murmured, resting her head on his chest where she could hear the steady beating of his heart. "And now we have a lifetime to build something beautiful together." Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering Silvergrass Ranch in a blanket of pristine white, nature's own symbol of the fresh start they had been given. Epilogue. Full circle 5 years later, 1880, the summer sun beat down on Silvergrass Ranch as Olivia stood on the porch, shading her eyes to watch the approaching riders. Samuel rode in front, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. Beside him on a smaller pony was their 4-year-old son, Christopher, sitting proudly in his own saddle, his father's hand occasionally reaching over to steady him. Behind them came Frank, now the official foreman of the expanded ranch operation, and Jeremiah, who had recently been promoted to assistant foreman. The men had been checking the north pasture where new calves were being branded. "Mama!" Christopher called out, waving excitedly as they drew nearer. "I helped Papa count the cows. Did you now?" Olivia smiled, descending the steps to meet them. "And how many are there?" "Lots and lots," the boy declared seriously. "Maybe 100. Samuel chuckled as he dismounted and lifted Christopher from his pony. "He's not far off. The herd's doing well this year." He leaned down to give Olivia a kiss, his eyes crinkling at the corners with the smile that came so easily these days. At 35, Samuel Abernathy had become one of the most respected ranchers in the territory. Silvergrass Ranch had expanded to nearly 5,000 acres, and their cattle were known for their quality throughout the region. "How are my girls?" he asked, placing a gentle hand on Olivia's rounded belly where their second child, the daughter the doctor predicted, was growing. "We're fine. Your daughter has been kicking up a storm today." Christopher tugged at his father's hand. "Can I go show Miss Charlotte my new rope trick?" "If she's not busy with her studies," Samuel agreed. The boy ran off toward the small schoolhouse that had been built on the ranch property 2 years earlier. It served not only Christopher but the children of the married ranch hands who now lived in cottages scattered across the property. Charlotte Reed, now 20, had fulfilled her dream of becoming a teacher and had come to Silvergrass the previous year to take charge of the small school. "How is she today?" Samuel asked as they walked hand in hand toward the house. "Better. The headaches seem to be less frequent. Dr. Miller says the spectacles are helping." Charlotte had begun experiencing vision problems and headaches the previous winter. Though not serious, the condition required her to wear spectacles for reading and to limit her time with books, a hardship for the scholarly young woman. "Good. And the preparations for the Independence Day celebration?" Olivia smiled at his attempt at casualness. "Everything's on schedule. The tables will be set up tomorrow, and the food preparation begins the day after. Eleanor and Richard arrive on Friday's stage." Charlotte's parents had become regular visitors to Silvergrass Ranch over the years. Eleanor Reed had taken Olivia under her wing, offering guidance on everything from managing a large household to navigating the social expectations that came with being the wife of a prominent rancher. Richard Reed, a successful banker in Denver, had formed a friendship with Samuel based on mutual respect and shared business interests. This year's 4th of July celebration would be the largest yet, with nearly 100 guests expected, ranch hands and their families, neighbors from surrounding ranches, and friends from Virginia City. It had become an annual tradition at Silvergrass, growing each year as the ranch prospered and the Abernathy circle of friends expanded. "Samuel," Olivia said as they reached the porch, "there's something I want to discuss with you." He looked at her curiously. "That sounds serious." "It is, in a way." She sat on the porch swing he had built for her after Christopher was born. "I received a letter today from a Mr. James Wilson. The name's not familiar. He's a lawyer in Kansas City. He was handling my father's estate." Samuel's expression darkened slightly at the mention of Bartholomew Fairchild. Even after 5 years, the memory of what he had done still brought a shadow to Samuel's eyes. "I thought there was no estate," he said, sitting beside her on the swing. "So did I. But apparently my father had a small claim to some land in Missouri, the farm where I grew up. It was sold recently when the town expanded in that direction." She handed him the letter. "There's money, Samuel. Not a fortune, but substantial." He scanned the document, his eyebrows rising. $5,000 is indeed substantial. What do you want to do with it? Olivia had been considering this question since the letter arrived that morning. "I want to establish a foundation for young women who need help escaping bad situations. We could provide temporary housing, help them find employment or education. Samuel's face softened with understanding and pride. Like what I did for you. Yes, but more organized, more far-reaching. She took his hand, her eyes earnest. There are so many women out there, Samuel. Girls like your sister Sarah. Women trapped in circumstances they can't control. We could make a real difference. I think it's a wonderful idea, he said, squeezing her hand. We could add to the initial amount. Make it something significant. You would do that? Of course. It's your vision, Olivia. I believe in it just as I believe in you. She leaned against him, grateful once again for the man who had not only saved her, but had consistently supported her growth and independence throughout their marriage. I was thinking we could call it the Sarah Abernathy Foundation, she said softly, in honor of your sister. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his arm tightening around her shoulders. She would have liked that, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. And I can think of no better way to use money that ultimately came from your father than to help others escape situations like the one he put you in. The irony wasn't lost on either of them that Bartholomew Fairchild, who had treated his daughter as property to be sold, would now, through this unexpected inheritance, fund an organization dedicated to preventing such treatment of other women. It feels right, Olivia said, like closing a circle. Later that evening, after Christopher had been tucked into bed with a story and a kiss, Samuel and Olivia sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the vast Montana sky. The ranch was peaceful, the only sounds the distant lowing of cattle and the soft chirping of crickets. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, Samuel said, his voice thoughtful in the darkness. About closing a circle. Yes. It made me realize how far we've come. 5 years ago, we were standing in the ashes of the old house, starting over. Now look at us. He gestured toward the thriving ranch spread out before them. A successful business, a beautiful home, a son and another child on the way. Friends, community, purpose, and love, Olivia added softly. Most importantly, love. Samuel turned to her, his face barely visible in the fading light. Do you ever regret it? Coming here with me that night? Never. Not for a single moment. She took his hand, placing it on her belly where their daughter kicked as if in agreement. That night you offered me a choice when no one else would have. You saw me as a person deserving of freedom and dignity. How could I ever regret choosing the man who did that? He leaned forward to kiss her, the tenderness of the gesture conveying what words could not: his gratitude for her presence in his life, his pride in the woman she had become, his enduring love that had only deepened with each passing year. As they sat together in the gentle summer night, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the terrified young woman being sold by her father to the confident wife, mother, and soon-to-be philanthropist she had become, it was a transformation she could never have imagined that fateful night in 1875. Samuel had given her the freedom to choose her own path, never expecting that she would choose him. But in doing so, they had both found something neither had been looking for: a love that had healed old wounds, built a family, and created a legacy that would extend far beyond the boundaries of Silvergrass Ranch. As if reading her thoughts, Samuel squeezed her hand gently. I bought your freedom, but you gave me your heart, he murmured. I'm still not sure I deserve such a gift, but I promise to treasure it always. And I promise the same, Olivia replied, resting her head on his shoulder as they gazed out over the land that had become their shared passion and the future that stretched bright with promise before them. In the distance, a shooting star streaked across the Montana sky, a fleeting reminder of how unexpected and beautiful life could be when one was brave enough to choose love. The end.